All right, hello everybody. This is Olivia Hereford, and I am one of the regional directors for ICT Digital Media for the Bay Area Community College Consortium. And we have just kicked off these tech talks about a month ago, and it's pretty exciting. And we would like to keep these going, so spread the word. And today, we have with us Kippy Arcara from FireEye, who is a program management, product management, and business operations role in FireEye. And also with us, we have Jenn Mvongo, who has 20 years in the mobile telecom industry. And she's a product software security champion. And so both of them are going to be talking to you today about the program awareness side of cybersecurity. And what we're going to do is they're each going to tell us a little bit about what they do, kind of like what a day in their lives is like, and maybe tell us a little bit about their story, about how they got into their roles. And we'll leave about maybe about 15, 20 minutes or so at the end for any questions that you may have. So if you have any, please put them in the chat. I'll be watching those if something comes up that I want to catch one of the speakers right away to answer, but otherwise we'll wait till the end of the talk and answer any of your questions. Okay, so I think Jenn, you're gonna start.
We were talking when we did the one with Sergio last week. We probably nerded everybody to death. So this one's gonna be a little less nerd and a little more like, how does it all get done, right? Because not every single person that goes through the programs are going to end up being the packet whispering, code writing, expert on what's happening with the malware reverse engineering, right? So these ones are Jenn's in the program that I'm in with the UC Berkeley Masters, and Kippy has worked for me for a couple of years and is absolutely differentiating for us getting the fixes done. So the last one was, how do we find out what the problems are? This one's, how do you fix them, and how do you run the programs for real human beings, right? Because even in companies like mine, there's a very small number of people that are the amazing top 2% in the world for how to do the malware research. You still have to actually fix stuff. So and Jenn, I think you were gonna share something, or was that Kippy that's sharing?
First, I should introduce Steve.
I am going to share stuff. So Olivia, if you could stop sharing, then I will be able to share.
All right. While I'm doing
and I hope that my internet hangs in there. Hopefully you guys can hear me.
Yeah.
Just
there we go.
Hold up your hands or something if you can't hear me.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. So first of all, before you get started, Jenn, I just want to introduce Steve. I didn't do that. Steve Booth is a Senior Vice President and CSO at FireEye, and he's my partner in crime in getting these kicked off. And I can't express my appreciation for the support he's given us in bringing these professionals to you to talk about their roles and what they do. So yeah, I wanted to just quickly introduce Steve and kick it off. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I would ask that, I know that a lot of people don't want to, share, turn their video on, but if you can, it's kind of good to see everybody. So anyway, all right, Jenn, take it away.
Uh-oh.
We lost her.
That was perfect timing to lose her too.
Well, hopefully she'll be back. We'll go ahead and switch the order. So, I'm happy to jump in here. Yeah. It was going to work so much better if Jenn went first, but we will make do, right? You adapt. So I really wanted to spend some time today just talking with you about how do you make an impact if you are not an engineer in cybersecurity. And so the first question I guess you might have is it possible to do that if I'm not willing to analyze traffic 24/7, if that's not really where my passion is? And the answer is absolutely. You still can make a difference in cybersecurity. And, for those of you who have cameras on, how about a hands up if you think cybersecurity is a great field to be in and it's growing? Anybody? Yeah, couple. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to assume those with oh, there we go. Thumbs up. Perfect. It really is such a growing industry, and there are opportunities that abound. So first off, I just want to say kudos to you for choosing this field. But if you're still trying to figure out what type of role you might work best in, Jen, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm started in, given that you had a little technical difficulty. So we'll let you go
sorry, you
second if that's
guys.
okay. No worries, no worries. Glad you're back with us. But anyways, if you're maybe not super technical, but you still think that cybersecurity is a really cool space to be in, and you acknowledge that there's a lot of opportunity there, then this is a great area for you to be considering. So one of the things that I'm just going to talk to you about is some of the roles that I've had in the industry first off. So one of those was product management. So for companies who deliver cybersecurity solutions like FireEye, they need product managers who understand the needs of the market. So what is it that customers really want? What are they seeing in terms of threat trends that need to be addressed? What new technologies need to be brought to market or new services? So they're looking at what the needs are and then translating that into technical requirements, right? So that folks can actually go build it. The product managers aren't building, they're defining what needs to be built and where the actual need is. So if you're someone who considers yourself maybe a visionary, if you enjoy communicating publicly, if you have a passion for cybersecurity, this role might be a good fit for you. So again, that's product management. Another role, and the one that I think is near and dear to Steve's heart, because this is what I did for him, was program management. And that's really, I guess, finding program managers who understand security is still kind of unique out here in the industry. So what program managers do are really to help technical teams and business partners and executives all understand the prioritization of security issues and work collaboratively to achieve those. They establish processes, looking at how do we get to the successful outcome? What does that look like, right? And they focus on accountability. So if you're a person who's able to influence others, who maybe you don't have direct supervisory control over, right? And you can communicate well and you're well organized, but maybe not interested in doing the hands-on security, right? Hands on the keyboard, then this might be a path you want to consider. And I'm going to spend more time tonight talking about what that looks like, but for now, let me tell you about one more role, and that's risk management. So risk management is often found as part of a GRC, governance, risk, and compliance organization. And so within that broader term, the GRC, you'll find folks who do things like running audits for the company. They can be third-party audits, or it can be responding to customer audits. And that can keep you very busy, but it's so important that you understand the security controls that those auditors are going to be asking you about. So that's part of GRC. On the risk side, it's really understanding, hey, what are our objectives as a business? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? And then what could possibly interfere with that, right? And those things are your risks. So once you've identified what those things are, it's helping the teams to prioritize them. It's looking at, okay, what is the impact if this were to happen? What's the likelihood of it happening? And then how are we going to handle this now that we know about it, right? Now that we have visibility into it. Is it something that we're going to try to solve? Is it something that we're going to try to mitigate? Or is it something that we're just going to maybe offload, we're going to transfer the risk to someone else? If you think of it in terms of like driving your car, there's a risk that you could get into an accident. And one of the ways that you transfer that risk is through car insurance, right? So there are multiple types of treatments of risk, and risk managers are really about understanding what the risks are, thinking through what's the likelihood, and then helping to drive either mitigation or some sort of treatment to minimize the risk to the organization. So I'll just pause there for a moment. Any questions about those three roles at a very high level?
Like somebody answered, someone asked, you use an acronym, GRC, governance, risk, and compliance.
That's correct, yeah.
And
Actually,
what was
let's
your
explain that
first
one.
role?
Let's do half a step more on that one. So governance, risk, and compliance is, most people think audits, right? So running the audits. However, when most people think audits, they're thinking Sarbanes-Oxley or financial audits. We're talking about security compliance audits, a SOC 2 audit, a FedRAMP audit, ISO audit, PCI DSS audits, right? all of that kind of stuff that companies just absolutely need in order to be able to provide services. Risk is in this context means tech risk, right? So how are you doing on your backups? How are you doing on your data retention? Kibbe right now is on a data retention thing for us, right? How do you do all of the other stuff that's not necessarily it's attacker tangential, but it's, like tech risk includes literally, are you taking backups before you do your next rollup? That kind of stuff. And then compliance is all of the check boxes that you just have to do. That right now is freaking exploding. I mean, absolutely exploding. The third-party risk, every major company on the planet is giving incredibly long questionnaires of these horribly detailed, like, do I let my company buy from you? And they're asking everything from what's your password policy to what are the exact permissions you have set on your admins in AWS. I mean, we have one of these with one of the banks. It's 500 hours long. We're into this thing. That's almost half a man year that we put into just onboarding one customer, right? So if you find yourself the most organized person in the room fairly often, I highly suggest you think this direction. Sorry, Kibbe.
No, that's great. And I would add to that for risk. So if you enjoy investigation, because that's part of it, right, is discovering what's happening in your environment. So that's part of it. If you are willing to keep up with the latest security standards, so there's research on your part, right, to stay on top of what are the appropriate controls to have in place, what do I need to pass that audit, et cetera. And again, detail-oriented and organized, as Steve has mentioned, those are all great characteristics for somebody who wants to go into risk or GRC more broadly, again, governance, risk, and compliance. And there was was it Claudia?
Yeah, what was your first one
one
again? Yeah.
Product management.
Okay.
Where you're responsible for an actual line of a product or a service, right? Bringing that to market, defining what it is, understanding what the need is in the market, right? So it's a little bit of a, if we build it, they will come, right? You're the person who's willing to step out and make that call. Okay, anybody else?
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, well, let me move on into, so if, you may just be wondering in general, how is security or security knowledge going to give you an edge if you're not the person who's analyzing traffic, if you're not out there investigating threats, et cetera. And so I just want to say that no matter what role you choose in the industry or in a cybersecurity company, having a solid understanding of security is going to benefit you, and it's going to benefit your future employer. So I think about it in these terms. So you may not be a red teamer. I don't know if you know what that term is, but it's like the person who tries to break into the network, right? They're trying to find the holes and expose those to a company so they can go plug them, just in layman's terms, right? So you may not be the person who's trying to break in or uncover the vulnerabilities, but if you understand what they're talking about when they find them, then you're able to help the engineering teams understand what they need to remediate. I think somebody probably needs to mute right now. I'm hearing some background there.
If everybody would please mute their audio right now. Thank you.
I think it's Chaz.
Yeah, Chaz dancing, whoever that is.
Thanks very much for that. So again, you may not be the person trying to break in, but if you understand what they're talking about when they say, hey, we found this vulnerability, XYZ, and if you can understand the criticality of that to your organization, then you add so much value when you then in turn take that to the engineering team or to whomever to say, hey, this is something that needs to be addressed and here's the impact if we don't, et cetera. So again, not necessarily the person doing the precision work, but you're the one who understands and can bring context to it. The other thing is just it gives you a seat at the table, right? So you can have competent discussions with others. And if you're in a role like program management, it allows you to call baloney if people are saying that's impossible to fix, or it's going to take 3 years. If you have some understanding of security technology and processes, then you can say, let's take another look at that. Let's dig into that a little bit more and see if maybe we can bring that into something like 6 months, right? Is that possible? What would it take? So Steve, I know that you've dealt with that before, where you've heard people say it's just not possible, or hey, we can never do it, right? But you have enough knowledge to say,
So
I'm calling foul on that, right?
That's a huge differentiator here, because what it gets down to is the way they heard the requirement, they believe it's impossible, right?
Mhm.
And it's not until they say, "Oh, hang on, that's like," I've literally heard people say that's, "Man, decades of work." And you go like, "Okay, hang on, we're talking about a config setting in a firewall." And what they heard was re-architect every single thing about how we do firewalls, for example, right? So if you didn't have the cyber background and stuff, you wouldn't know what it was. It doesn't mean you couldn't still say, "Okay, that sounds like more than we were asking for, so let me check." But you get to sort of short circuit those kinds of things, right? Think of it as more situational awareness. If you were going to war, there's one SEAL Team 6 and there's 10,000 people supporting them. What we're talking about here is those 10,000 people, right? Like what are all the things that enable what we're doing in the battle? And Kippy is one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. And there's a joke that goes around our place. We call her my velvet hammer. She's the one that shows up to all the meetings, and she, bless your heart, I know that you had that due last Friday and it's Tuesday now and you haven't given it yet, but we have to give this report into the CEO. So you probably have it ready and we're going to get it to me by tomorrow, right? I mean, like, and it's just like, she is the nicest thing to just shame you into getting your job done, to the tune of it, from my side, from the chief security officer, hundreds of times, literally multiple hundreds of times. We have closed projects simply because somebody's there tapping them on the forehead going, "Are you done yet?" Right? Squeaky wheels and all that. So,
Richard,
All right.
throw to good. You have your hand up.
That was from really early on, Olivia. So when we were talking about our interest in cyber. So I should probably take it down now. It's getting tired. Sorry about that.
Richard is
No, that's fine, Richard.
Richard is one of the regional directors. He's also one of my partners in crime. Thanks for being here, Richard. Okay, all right.
Okay, so what I want to turn the conversation to now is really drilling into what it looks like to build a security program from a program manager's perspective, right? So I will say my current role at FireEye is Director of IT Risk Management. But I really cut my teeth doing security program management with Steve, and he was so gracious to bring me into that role. And really, I learned so much from the organization there, and I'm still doing a lot of that in this new role with more of a focus on risk. But the skills I learned there are certainly still useful to me today. And one of the things that I think is most important about program management is the ability to influence outside your chain of command. So it's unlikely as a program manager that you would be the person who would be dictating the work of an engineering team. But somehow you have to make sure that team is addressing what's most important. And so program management is broader than security program management, but obviously the focus of my topic today is around security program management. So I'm only going to be talking in that context. So the first thing I would say is it's important for you to understand, if you haven't already lived this in the real world, is that there is this natural friction between security teams and IT teams, and between security teams and development teams. And the reason for that really comes down to how each team is measured and what they think is most important. So from a security team, it's going to be, hey, I need to protect our organization. If we get popped in some way, then it's going to be our reputation on the line, and maybe we're going to lose IP, and maybe we're going to lose customer data, right? So we're going to have financial risk. There's no telling, right, what's going to happen. And if you're a cybersecurity company and those things happen to you really, really bad, right? So that's the focus of the security team, is we must not let these breaches happen, right? We must secure what we do. But then you move over to the engineering team, and they're oftentimes measured on, okay, can I get these new features to market by the date I said I would, right? Do I have on-time delivery? So that means they're not going to be so inclined to leave open sprints to do security work, because it's not a new feature, right? It's plugging a gap, but they're feature driven. And then you have the IT teams who are maybe measured on uptime, right? Is my network up all the time? And if I have to take it down because I have to address security issues, then I'm not going to meet that SLA. So there's just this friction, right? Everybody has a different priority. So your job is to come in and to be able to influence the priorities across those teams, right? So you're taking input from the security team. Maybe it's through a red team exercise. Maybe it's through a customer audit. Maybe it's just through internal analysis, right, that you've done. So these things are coming to you oftentimes from security architects and security engineers, or maybe even other companies that you've hired to come in and find some of these gaps for you. So as you're gathering all this input, then it's your job to convey that back out to the engineering teams that have to fix it, or to the IT team that needs to do some things on the infrastructure side. And again, you have to help them understand the importance of it. So why does this matter to your company? What difference is it going to make? Why is it important for me to take my focus off what I thought was the most important thing to what you're now asking of me? So, but it's really important to just help them understand your current security posture, right? So what does it look like across our company? Do we have a pretty solid position, or is someone really banging on the door already and we're just sticking our fingers in holes, right? Plugging holes in the dike. So you don't want to be in that latter position, right? So that's what you just have to be able to convey, that you have to be able to convince people that the work you need them to do is important and they need to prioritize it. So I call that kind of being the change advocate. Hey, we have to do something different than what you've already intended to do. We have to look at this differently. The other thing really is to be a strong communicator. So it just kind of feeds into what we just talked about, but you've got to be able to tell that story, right? Why is security important? What are the impacts if these findings aren't mitigated or resolved? You have to communicate to technical audiences on both sides of the fence. So the folks who are finding the issues, again, red teamers or security architects, security engineers, et cetera, and those folks who need to go fix the issues. That might be a network engineer. It might be a product developer, right? So you have to be able to talk at the technical layer, but then you also need to be able to talk up to management, right? To help them understand, hey, this is what I really need your teams to do, and I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to hold you accountable. And then above that, even to execs to say, hey, you need to have visibility. This is what's going on in your company. Now, they don't want the finite details, but they do want the big picture. They do want to know, hey, do I need to stay awake tonight because this isn't being taken care of? Do I need to consider finding additional resources, right, to help these teams out? So you've got to be able to communicate those things strongly. And then to Steve's point earlier, you've got to have really strong organizational skills. So if that's your natural bent, I would say it's something that's, I think you either kind of, you have it or you don't. And if you're not organized, this is not the role for you. Because what you have to do is figure out, how are you going to track this whole body of security work, right? Has it been prioritized? Who are the owners? Who can approve exceptions? What are the SLAs for remediation? Those are the kinds of things you have to be thinking about. And it can't just all be up in your head, right? So you can be the smartest person in the room, but if nobody understands these things, if they are not aware of these things, then you're not helping. So some of the tools of the trade for this particular role are ticketing systems like Jira, scanning tools like Qualys or Tenable to find the vulnerabilities in systems, and then reporting tools. Again, something like Jira does some reporting. We also use Power BI to help look at things in different ways and provide different views that might be better suited for an exec versus a technical person. And then collaboration tools, Office 365 Teams, whatever you might use to communicate with people. And then at FireEye, for our use case, we actually developed some processes and customized our Jira implementation to allow us specifically to identify a security leadership priority for tickets. So we were, instead of just saying, hey, there's all this security work that you need to do, we've said there's all this work you need to do, but here are the critical ones, right? And here are the things that can take some time, because if this vulnerability was exposed, it's not going to have much of an impact to our organization. So again, being able to understand what the security leadership priority is, and then also giving them an opportunity to indicate that they've reviewed it. There's a PM review status field we added to say, hey, I've looked at this and I need more information, or I've accepted it and I've assigned it to a sprint, or I'm going to request an exception just as an example. Those are some of the things they might tell us through this tool. And then because we put it all.
Let me drop one thing that's really important, because this is actually, I think, hugely important. Part of the reason why I'm doing as many of these talks with you all is to try to link the sort of the things that may not be quite so intuitive. So when Kippy joined in my org, she had never logged into Jira before. She's now one of the most expert people on how to pull information out of Jira. That doesn't mean she knows how to say, like, here's the code, or here's the setting, or the config, or whatever. It means that somebody said, hey, we need this report. And she's like, well, I can do that, right? She's not in charge of the vulnerabilities on the Windows boxes, for example, but she learned how to pull the report and make sure it was given to the proper engineer, right? Those kinds of things seem pretty freaking close to the kind of person that takes classes and learns new things, right? It's not a matter of whether you already have some magical skill in your head. You go like, yeah, hell yeah, I can do that. Somebody showed me once and I got it, right? And that's literally what happened. Is I'm sitting here bragging on how amazing Kippy was for my organization, had never logged onto Jira, never seen a scan report, none of this stuff. And she made massive enablements in my group. Those are key nuances.
And I haven't actually worked with you, Kippy, but I can add to that you know, that you have enough technical understanding to create a meaningful report, right? You can learn how to create a report, but it also is the right stuff so that it means something.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Jen. Yeah. And so as we customized the tool for our needs, what it allowed us to do then was to report out the things that were most important. And we tried to focus our teams on a metric or two at a time. So as an example, we first said, hey, have you even looked at these things, right? Have you assigned a PM review status? So that's the first thing we started looking at. And then we were like, hey, have you assigned it to a warm body? Because you'd be surprised how many things fall through the cracks when it's just assigned to a team, right? Who's accountable when it's a team? It needs to be an actual person, right? Steve, I need you to take care of this particular item by this date, right? So, doing some of those customizations made that easier for us. And of course, we were always looking at the big number, which is, are we closing those tickets that are open, right? What's our close rate? And then just again, talking about those things that make you a successful security program manager. The last one, and probably the most important one, is really driving accountability. So again, once you have visibility into those issues and the metrics to track the progress, you've really got to focus on ensuring the work gets done, that people are accountable to the commitments they've made. And so this is actually where I was going to share that I'm a velvet hammer, according to Steve. But some people are sledgehammers, right? They're just like, I'm going to beat you down until you do it. But that's not my style, and everybody has their own style. Steve might be a sledgehammer. I don't know. I'm not saying it, but but the velvet hammer works equally as well, I would say. So you just really, every person develops their own style. For me, it's about being consistent, right? I'm going to keep asking, but being professional. So I don't demean the folks, but I do remind them of the importance of it. I'm not going to let them forget, hey, this is what you're risking by not fixing this. Or do you really want to be the guy? Do you want to be the guy who decided he didn't have time to fix this thing and tomorrow we get breached, right? Are you sure? I know you're busy, but how about you take this win, right? Let me tell the company what a great thing you've done here. So that's just one approach. So as you're driving accountability, one of the things that is helpful in that is to understand, again, what motivates people, right? So we talked earlier about how they're measured, right? So if they're measured on uptime or whatever, so understanding what's driving their behaviors, but then also understanding how they get motivated to do the next best thing. Is it through some type of public or private affirmation? Is it just the challenge of stopping a breach before it happens, right? What is it that motivates that person, that team? And then you can feed into that, right? Equally important is understanding what demotivates them. So sometimes people will see this large backlog of work and they'll just kind of go into this like paralysis. They just don't even know where to start, right? So perhaps you can then step in and say, let me help you figure out how to put this into manageable sprints. And then you be successful in this sprint, and then let's go to the next sprint and work on these issues, right? Or some people feel like you're throwing things over this virtual wall. Like, hey, just go do all these things. And so they're like, but I don't have enough mitts to catch it all, and I don't know what to do with it. So again, in this case, maybe what they need is to have some working sessions with a security architect or engineer or red teamer who found the problem in the first place to help them kind of solution through and understand what exactly is being asked of me. So again, it's really knowing your teams, knowing the folks that you're asking to do these things for you. And then you've heard the phrase, if you see something, say something, right? The same thing is true in program management. If you see that a person or a team is struggling, you really need to step in and find a way to help them through that. If they're blocked, let's figure out what the blocker is and help them with that. So one of the things that we've done at FireEye that's been super helpful is to have regular meetings with our security champions, and Jen's going to talk about that a little bit more later. But folks who are really advocates within each team, right? Having regular meetings with them and with the people who are responsible for the work to address the security issues. And by doing that, it gives us just a chance to say again, okay, hey, what are the blockers? Do you need additional guidance on this issue? What is your time frame looking like? Are we going to make these commitments that we've made. And again, sometimes it's about understanding what's happening in their world and then advocating for more resources for them. And then the other thing we did was held monthly or quarterly meetings with leaders and execs. And that really, in addition to giving them visibility into what's going on in their org, which is important, it was also kind of a little bit of a stick, if you will. So with some teams, we'd say, hey, I know things have been hard and you haven't been able to get to this work, but just a reminder, I have to meet with the leadership team next week, and I'd love to be able to give you credit for this work, right? So it's amazing how that changes people's opportunities to get things done. Suddenly, there's a little bit more time in the day to prioritize those things that they know are going to be reported on up the chain. And so I've talked a lot about holding people accountable, but I also just want to say it's so important to celebrate their success too. So you've heard me say that a few times in a couple of different ways, but I'm serious about that. People are not going to, they're just not going to keep coming and doing the hard work and working the extra hours, et cetera, if all you're doing is ever beating them with a stick, right? You've got to also appreciate their work. And it's a real appreciation, because who wants to be working for the company that gets breached? I don't want to be, they don't want to be, right? So I really genuinely am appreciative when they've done these things that help make us a more secure company. So just make sure that you're expressing that appreciation, really, no matter what job you have. If you're working cross-functionally, definitely take time to do that. And so then in closing out my part of our discussion tonight, I just want to maybe share a couple quotes with you from Peter Drucker. One is that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. This is a big one for Steve, and he's always like, if we don't know what's happening, if we're not looking at the measurements, how do we know what we even need to improve, excuse me. And then another of his quotes is, management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. And so I would say to you that if you leverage that security knowledge that you're working on, that you're gathering here through your courses, and then you use your relationships to influence others, you ensure your teams are measured on what's most important, and you enable them with good processes and then hold them accountable, you're going to absolutely help your leadership do the right things. So I think the result of that is that you're going to have a better organization. They're going to have a more secure posture. And at a very, at the minimum, you're going to have avoided potential breaches of your company and certainly some reputational harm. So what I just want to say with all of that is the work you do matters, whether or not you're an engineer, right? If you're contributing, it matters. And that's one of the things Steve has impressed upon me, because I've often been the one person in the room who's not the most technical, right? And so he's like, but I'm telling you, Kippy, you make a difference. What's the word you use? Your accelerator? Is that the term? I'm trying to think now, Steve. What's that one?
A lot of the words that I use, I can't have on the recording. So, you know.
Force accelerator. That's it. I just remembered it. Yeah.
Force multiplier.
Force multiplier. Yeah. There we go.
Actually, I do that one a lot because often when you have a bunch of engineers in a room, they may not agree, and they're not typically the ones that have the most information about how to come to a solution, right? They're engineers. That's what they do, right? And sometimes it's really useful having a nice person in the room going like, okay, so I hear what you're saying, but it sounds like that one makes sense too. And how can we come up with something, because we have a solution we have to deliver, right? Not how smart are you and how good is your code. It's we have something we have to get done, and it's 2 PM already, and we have to get this done by 5, right? So should we leave time for Jen to get into the products?
Yeah, I'm just going to wrap up really quick with, just one last statement. Sorry about that, Jen. And that is just that I just wanted to share with you guys that when I was in college, I commuted and I worked 2 or 3 jobs to get through it. And I was grateful for that because I didn't have a lot of debt at the end of it, right? So it definitely was the right move for me, but I know it's hard, right? You're kind of being pulled in multiple directions and there's a lot on you. But I want to tell you that the perseverance that you're learning now, the way that you're learning to juggle multiple priorities, all of that's going to serve you well in your future career. So hang in there and just stick with it. Okay, Jen, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Okay, second time's the charm. Hopefully my internet will stay up this time. I'm so sorry about that. That was such bad timing. So I'll be talking about some of what I talk about will overlap a lot and kind of reiterate some of the things that Kippy has said. My background is actually technical. I started as a software engineer at Qualcomm, mobile telecom company. and I did development, and I got into customer support, and eventually got into more like process and quality initiatives. I'm the one that wants to be doing the right thing, and I like taking something and making it better. So I kind of got into that. And then at some point, because I was in that role, when the product security team started getting built, they pulled me in to help with designing how we were going to document security issues. So I'm going to tell you more about that. But after that, I got laid off. So that's why I'm in this program with Steve. I decided to kind of double down and really focus on security. So I'm working on building my security-focused career. And at the moment, I'm still a student. So let's talk about Qualcomm. Qualcomm's product is mobile. Well, they have lots of products now, but largely in the mobile space. I wanted to bring up that there are multiple areas where cybersecurity could have a place in a company like this. So there's IT security, there's security features, and there's product security. And I am going to talk about all those things. Wait, I need to get my notes visible. Sorry, trying to do notes and other things. Yeah, so that was that. So let's talk about network security first. This is probably what you're most familiar with. This is mostly what Kippy was talking about. So even a company like Qualcomm also has to worry about network security, people intruders into the network, attacking the company's resources. The next thing that a company like Qualcomm had was our product was chips and software that we sold to like the Samsungs and Apples of the world to build their devices. So that package that was delivered to customers had software in it. And so we had a whole team of engineers building software security features into those products. So that's another area where cybersecurity is involved at Qualcomm. This is, again, still mostly techie stuff, but again, you would have things that people like Kippy was talking about, product managers and program management in those areas as well. Next, we have product security. So this is the area that I worked in. And what do I say here? The effort of product security was to take that product that I just talked about, right? What we were delivering to our customers and making sure that it was secure, right? Because it's also software. And so we had this whole process surrounding product security where we had to first identify vulnerabilities. And there are multiple ways that we would identify them. One was by working with external security researchers. We had a bug bounty program. So I don't know if you've heard about bug bounties, but we worked with HackerOne and other security researchers who would try to find vulnerabilities in the Qualcomm products. There were also campaigns to do static analysis. There are tools for that, things like Lint and no, I can't even remember what the other tools are called. Code reviews, this is just inspecting the code. Dynamic testing, like fuzz testing. I don't know if anyone's even heard of that term, but fuzz testing will take a particular vector into the code, like a protocol or an API, and will, let's say your API is supposed to take 5 parameters, and it will go through a whole variety of random or semi-random inputs to make sure that all of those are being handled. And what that can uncover is a variety of things like buffer overflows and other types of vulnerabilities. So now we have this whole collection of vulnerabilities that we found. Then they need to be assessed. Kip, you talked a lot about how do you prioritize issues. So even though we're talking about product security instead of IT security, you still have to assess what the risk is. How severe is it? Is it something that could inject code? Or is it something that causes a denial of service? Some of those things are higher priority than others. So prioritization is part of the assessment. And then finally, they have to be fixed. And this goes into what Kippy was talking about, where the people who have to make these fixes that are to a security vulnerability, they're also trying to develop new features, and they're trying to fix functional bugs, right? Like the feature, if the feature is broken, obviously they're going to want to prioritize fixing a feature rather than fixing a vulnerability that on the surface doesn't seem to affect the functionality. So influencing and educating the engineers to understand the importance of fixing security vulnerabilities was a huge part of this work. And then finally, publishing. So we had to both notify customers when we had fixed vulnerabilities, but we also need to notify them when we had uncovered them, right? So we have to let them know both, hey, we fixed all these things, but we also have to let them know we prioritized fixing these, and these are still open, and we're aware of them, and you should be aware of them too, because now you need to accept the risk that's associated with that. You might want to wait until you have that fix before you deploy a new, update to your device. Or mitigations, right? So sometimes when we published information about an open bug, we would include mitigations. Like if you were able to, only use this configuration, then it won't be a problem. So that's describing the whole system of product security. And now I'll tell you a little more about what I specifically did. So the biggest thing, sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. The biggest thing is training. So there was a huge effort that we undertook to train the entire software organization on security. So secure coding techniques, this process, right? How to document their open issues and how to document the fixes, why it was important to prioritize them, like why a critical security vulnerability was basically the same level of priority as a critical functional bug. So I was involved. So as a less technical person, getting into training and awareness is definitely one of the directions that you can go. And then this little image here is supposed to evoke the security champion concept. Trying to train thousands of engineers to learn all of this stuff. I mean, we did, right? We really tried to reach everyone so that everyone got that message. But when it came down to it, we ran some statistics, and the security vulnerabilities were only like 1% of the overall bugs in the code. So if there's only 1% that are security vulnerabilities, when it comes time for it, it shows up on your work queue, maybe that's the only one you saw that year. So you're not going to remember all of the security training that you had potentially. So not only did I feel like I was a security champion, like that was my role, was to evangelize security and make sure that people were learning about this. We also had to train up security champions on each of the sub teams, right? So there was like the audio subsystem and the call stack and all these different subsystems in the code, and each one had a security champion that made sure that they learned about the whole process. They came to some of these, standing meetings about the status of the latest, the bugs, and learned the latest processes and made sure that the people on their team were aware as well. So that was, that's the building up of security champions. And what else do I want to tell you? The other things that I was involved in, we also had like a customer portal where we, supported customers on a whole variety of things. And I ended up being the security champion for the features that customers would need that were related to security vulnerabilities. Like we published a security bulletin and they wanted to be able to see, do I have all those fixes in my code yet? So we had to build features to support that. So I think I tried to speak kind of quickly because I wanted to leave some time for questions. I think I saw the chat firing off, so I'm not sure if that was just, you know, side conversations or if that was questions for me and
I've been
Kippy.
trying to answer some of them as they go.
Excellent.
Yes, Steve is
So
a lot of them. But
okay, good.
one of the things, do you have more? Go ahead.
No, that was it. So yeah, let's have a conversation.
I think a one that probably go to both of you, it came up during, you know, during Kippy's talk, is, you know, what type of experience and schooling is necessary for your jobs and the roles that you do?
Jenn, you go ahead.
I was going to say, I started from like a slightly more traditional path, having started as a software engineer, but I was never in IT. I only did development. So, I mean, I know from other classmates who did not start with that path that that's not entirely necessary, and especially not if you decide to go into more product management. It is important to be able to understand tech. Sorry, I got distracted by more questions. Computer language that I'm finding most useful now is Python. So that seems to be the most flexible these days. I started programming in C, so that shows my. I mean, yeah. I don't want to show my age. Started programming in C and on computers that are less powerful than my cell phone. So.
So I'll pop in there too. For me, when I went to school, there was no such thing as cybersecurity. Quite honestly, Olivia and I were joking about this earlier today or yesterday. But I majored in math with a concentration in computer science. That was what was available to me at the time. You guys are so much more fortunate to have the cybersecurity curriculum available to you now. I would suggest definitely having kind of a cross section of courses in cybersecurity, because I really think that's going to be a differentiator if you're interested in any of the roles that I mentioned. But then also doing classes on project management. If you're interested in product management, you probably want to have some things on marketing, right, to understand how to do that side of the world, and maybe some business classes in addition to those. So just a couple things to help you out there.
Any other questions? I think for right now, if you guys can either put it in chat or just unmute yourself and shout it out. Jean?
Yes, thank you. So this summer I was kind of looking at some of the security certifications. So give me some feedback on those, and if you are, if you think they're helpful, and which ones do you think have a better reputation? I'm not sure how to answer that. But something about those the certifications, because it seems like there's fewer more these days.
I'm seeing a big move to things in the cloud. So the cloud security certifications, I think, would be helpful. Steve, do you know the acronyms off the top of your head? Is it CSSP? Is that the cloud?
It depends on whether you're getting the ones that are more sort of cross-cloud, like the ones out of ISC squared, or whether you're talking, like personally, I would very specifically get anything from Amazon, anything from Microsoft about Azure, and anything from Microsoft about Office 365.
Oh.
After them, there's like Salesforce has certifications also. Workday even has certifications. Like some of the cloud SaaS products have their own things. So like Kippy, I'm thinking Krista, who runs all of our Salesforce stuff. She's outstanding, and she owns soup to nuts, owns all of the Salesforce stuff. She doesn't have to know anything about Amazon. It doesn't run there, right? It runs in Salesforce's cloud. I read a thing a few weeks ago that was talking about the projection for 2023. So we're literally only talking just a couple of years from now, is that like 65% of IT infrastructure spend will be in the cloud. That is way faster than anybody had predicted. Like everybody knows stuff's moving there. That's a massive moving of billions of dollars of investment.
A lot of hardware.
Yeah, don't train anything in old data centers. Just don't put any learning time there at all. You could pick that up along the way. absolutely, if you're going to get a certification, get it in Amazon, Azure, Office 365, any of the major ones.
Thank you. Do you guys want to, ladies, anything else that you want to suggest?
No, I think I'd follow that.
Okay, thank
Go
you.
ahead, Jen.
The Masters in Information and Cybersecurity program at UC Berkeley is great.
Jen and I are both getting that.
Kibbe, I have a question. You mentioned, you threw out the term SLAs.
Mhm.
Is that, and that, that's around, obviously that's something that, at least when I was going through, that it existed, but we didn't get a whole lot about it in our classes. Do you think that that's something that we should be thinking about in our curriculum, understanding that?
Well, and so I'm sorry, I threw out an acronym without explaining what it is, but it's a service
I knew what it
level
was,
agreement.
but
Yeah, of course you did, Olivia, but
I threw
for
a
those who may
definition in the
not have.
chat.
Yeah, oh, good. Service level agreement. So you'll find that often in contracts, right, with vendors or with customers. So what is the agreement that you're making to the service levels you provide? So typically that's a metric. So if you think about internet providers, they'll say, I'll guarantee you 99.999, that's called 3 nines, right? Uptime. That might be part of their SLA. For us in dealing with security remediations. It had to do with how long is reasonable to expect you to take to fix a problem. And that was measured usually in days, right? So as far as training around that, I don't know that there would be a course around that. It's just a matter of kind of understanding criticality, right? And then organizing your work so that you're addressing the most critical things first.
Actually, let's go back to the question before on certifications. There are certifications on product management that are wildly useful. I just realized that there's actually another way to help answer that question. The first one is for the product management certifications, or the project management. There's a group called the PMI, the Project Management Institute, that has a certification called a PMP, Product Management Professional. It is the industry standard certification for this, bar none. It's also a really hard test, and you have to have been a project manager for a certain number of years to even be allowed to get it. They have one down from there. I forget the acronym for it, but they do have one that says, I've passed the test, but I don't have the number of times in the job. That one will also get you a job unquestionably. Now, the best way to answer this, if you're looking up individual certifications, is go look at the job postings asking about it. Right. So if you were to say like, all right, show me job postings asking for a PMP certification, you will get thousands, like unquestionably you will, right? But if you were to say like, okay, should I get a certification on the Hewlett Packard or IBM cloud? How many job postings are even asking about that versus an Amazon certification? There will be multiple orders of magnitude difference between those two, right? It also actually helps, and this sort of goes to Alan's question from stuff earlier. If you're looking up the jobs that you think you either want or you're close to being qualified for, look at how they put the wording in the job requirements, because honestly, right now you sort of have to get past the recruiter, but you have to get past the algorithms. You want your resume to say things that look almost exactly like what they're asking for, right? So you might not have the correct word in there. You might say, I'm proficient on multiple clouds. You should say, I'm proficient on AWS and Azure. You need to have those words in your profile, right? Those kinds of things really, really matter. So what you sort of get into is, once you figure out what your certifications are that you're going after, you then literally go search for a bunch of jobs before you actually apply for them. Modify your resume into saying, okay, I think I'm going to do okay with the algorithms, and then apply. Seriously, try applying. There is no downside for applying, none. The whole imposter syndrome of, I don't think I'm good enough for this. Find out. If they just, the worst case is they don't call you, right? I mean, like, it really is not that big a deal. So
there's a question here. What about certified associate in project management?
I don't know that one. Do you guys? You're on mute, Jen. She's on mute, but no.
I'm just shaking my
I'm
head.
not familiar with it, but if it's something that's being offered at the community college there, and gives you skills for project management, then yeah, absolutely, I would go for that.
So if it's from the PMP stuff, then absolutely it's worth it. What that means is that they will be giving you, even if it's only half of the content for a PMP, totally worth it. When I was getting back when I was starting to become a nerd, my first certification was a Microsoft certification, but they had this whole one on like networking essentials. Turns out that the stuff I learned in that certification helped me get my CISSP like 10 years later. It was actually that useful, right? So none of it's wasted. The only problem is you don't really want to be showing I've got 12 different certifications. You want 2 or 3 useful ones and a job, right? I mean, any other questions from students? You can just come off mute or type them. Either one's fine.
The questions?
Please. That's what we're here for.
We've got 1 more minute.
No, I'm good. Thank you. It's been really a lot of information. That's great.
So what was, both of the ladies, what was your first job in the security world?
So my first job was at Qualcomm.
And what did you do?
My only job. My first job in security was when I got pulled into the project to document security vulnerabilities, and I just started learning so much about it. So I came into it from doing software development. Oh, a question about Eudora. Funny enough, we read all these security studies, and one of them was on the usability and the security of Eudora email. It was great. I was like, oh, Eudora. I actually don't know what happened to it. It seemed to, we eventually had to switch to Outlook at Qualcomm.
And so Jeannie, to answer your question about first job in security, so my first security company was Symantec, and I was brought in a business development role. My job was to find partners to integrate our virus detection engine with. So I partnered with the likes of AMC and Microsoft and others, integrating with their network attached storage or their web cache, et cetera. And then that turned into product managing those integrated offerings. So it was a nice transition.
By the way, Kippy was doing sales operations stuff for us and how to get all this stuff into the Oracle system. When I said, oh no, you're way too useful for that. I need you over here on critical things. The salespeople can go rot for all I care. We got to get stuff done.
Well, Jen, Kippy, and Steve, thank you so much for your time. A great interaction in this talk. It was great. And again, I remind you that the full recording will have available on the Bay ICT website. It usually takes us a day to get that up and posted, and then with some promo stuff on the front page. So anyway, look for that.
You want to talk about the next 2 talks we
And
have
then
scheduled?
the next 2, we have a talk scheduled on December 7th, and that is Matt, and I can't remember.
Matt Shelton, who works on my team. He's my head of intelligence. Yeah, he's gonna do threat intelligence, attack groups. It'll be more technical, but not quite as technical as it was for the last one with Sergio. Really, really interesting. He's actually a lot of fun to listen to. And then the one after that one, the week after, we're doing sort of the government jobs angle. I have one person that does cyber policy for the Office of Budget and Management, and somebody that does counterintelligence for the FBI. They're both going to come and do sort of the government job angle of things. But literally, they both are in my program over at Berkeley, and we had to wait until the end of our capstone projects before I could get them in to talk. So.
And that is the December after December 7th, the week in that.
It will be December 7th, and then the following Tuesday. We're doing like Monday, Tuesday to catch as many classes as we can. But the schedule is also on the website with more details about the talks.
Thank you all very much for making the time to join us.
Great.
Steve,
Thank
sorry,
you so
what
much.
program? Steve, hi, it's Charles. What program are you from? The CAL program you talking about?
Oh, UC Berkeley has it's called a MICE, a Master of Information in Cybersecurity. That's the program Jen and I are in, a couple of other people are in.
that we're working
I,
with.
We need, we
like my
need a
entire
BA.
wardrobe now is cow crap now, right? I can walk around saying "Go Bears" all the time. So
We need a BABS to join that program, Steve.
yeah, you need one of those two, and unless you have 10 years of experience, you also have to pass the GRE, which is a horrible test.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, thank you all very much.
Thanks,
We'll see you on the
everyone.
next
And
one.
we'll see you.
Thanks
in-
for having us.
Yeah, thank you so
Finish
much for having
strong.
us.
Thank you
Goodbye.
for sharing. Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.